Hoppers are a staple of Redstone because of their ability to grab items and move them around. You can get them through crafting, requiring some iron ingots and a chest. This can be fairly expensive if you're making a lot of them without an iron farm, but you can thankfully find some lying around trial chambers, feeding into barrels. I don't know why these are here, but it's convenient and it gives me another thing to steal while I'm visiting, so I'm not too upset. As for what they are, they're non-conductive blocks that cannot be moved by pistons. They're able to pull in items from above them, whether it's from a container or the world as item entities. If pulling from a container that has a result slot, like furnaces or brewing stands, those result slots will be what's pulled from. One exception to this is hoppers being able to take empty buckets out of the fuel slot of a furnace to clear space after a lava bucket gets used up. Another exception to this is crafters, because the little crafting output slot that you see is purely visual, and you still need to actually power it to get it to craft. For more storage-based containers, like chests or barrels, or crafters fit into this category, items will be pulled starting from the top left and moving right and down as the stacks start to empty out. If pulling in item entities from the world instead, the entire block of space above the hopper will be checked for items. This even goes if a block is placed above the hopper, as long as that block doesn't take up the full block of space. Examples that come to mind are slabs, fences, and soul sand. If the block does take up the full block of space, the hopper will stop checking that area for items. The only exceptions to this rule are bee nests and beehives, because a hopper will continue to check that space for items. Also important to note is that if any container is placed above a hopper, then the hopper will be checking that container for stuff to grab instead of the block space in the world. This goes for things that you may not think of as containers too, like composters, because hoppers are able to pull the bone meal out of that composter when it's full. Along with taking in items, hoppers are also able to push items into other containers. Hoppers have a little nub thing coming out the bottom, which shows you where it's pointing. If the block it's pointing at is a container of some sort, then the hopper will try to push any items from its own inventory into the container it's pointing at. If the container has defined input and output slots, the hopper will only put stuff into the input slots. And if the container has multiple different input slots, like furnaces or brewing stands, the side of the block that the hopper is pointing at will change which input will be accessed. Generally with this, the quote-unquote main input will be accessed through the top, such as the stuff a furnace is going to smelt, and any secondary things will be put in through the side, like blaze powder and water bottles into a brewing stand. If a hopper receives a redstone signal, it'll become locked and stop trying to move items around until it stops receiving a signal. This is helpful for a lot of things, but a big one I wanted to highlight here is item sorters. Item sorters work by filling a hopper so it can only reasonably take in one type of item. Generally, this is done by putting in one of the item you want to sort, and then 4 filler items that are some renamed thing that you won't be sorting through. You generally want this hopper to be pointing towards something that it won't be able to put anything in, so that all it can do is take in items from either a water stream or a pipe of hoppers running above it. To take things out of this filter hopper, you can use another hopper that gets unlocked when the filter hopper gets full enough. To check for this, a pretty simple circuit is generally made from a redstone torch and a comparator. To finish off my little talk about hoppers, I wanted to talk about slightly more technical stuff that may be useful to keep in mind, but generally not going to be too necessary. Just wanted to talk about a hopper's cooldown and its process order. Whenever a hopper runs its little process, it tries to push an item from its own inventory into any that it may be facing, and then it tries to pull in an item from either a container or the world. Because of this, it's able to pull in an item and push out an item at the same time, but it will always be left with at least one item if it's continuously pulling stuff in. If it successfully runs its process and moves some items around, it starts up a little cooldown timer and waits 4 redstone ticks, or 4/10 of a second, to run its process again. Using this cooldown is how hopper-based clocks and timers can be made. So you can count up the number of items, multiply it by 4/10 of a second per item, and you can get the amount of time it will take a hopper to move that many items. That's pretty much all I wanted to say about hoppers. I'll keep this short. I don't have a lot to say. Have fun doing some redstone.